Right, well, welcome to Ruskin's study. We're going to take a trip around Ruskin's study and look at some of the things that are in it and have an exploration of some of the things that are hidden away in the cabinets and doors, behind the doors of the study. So we'll take a bit of a wander around, but we're going to start with the biggest of all the sort of subjects, if you like, that occupied physically and mentally Ruskin's study, and that is the minerals, his mineral collection. Ruskin started collecting minerals when he was a child. His father gave him one of those little box sets that children get of beautiful sparkling crystals. From that moment onwards, Ruskin was sold on the beauty of minerals and geology. By the age of 15, he was actually a member of the Geological Society in London, which was relatively newly formed, certainly its youngest member. And within a year, he'd written a learned paper on the colour of the water in the Alps. So that gives you some sort of sense of how important this subject was to him from the very beginning of his life. And it turned him into a collector. I mean, Ruskin was very fortunate to be wealthy. He inherited his father's money. His father was very generous to him. So from a very early age, he started collecting minerals. And we know for a fact that Ruskin had at least 5,000 minerals during the course of his life that he acquired. And he gave away a good proportion of those, certainly more than half of them. But he retained here at Brantwood his personal collection. And that personal collection obviously meant a great deal to him. In fact, there's a rather beautiful little entry in his catalogues of minerals. I mean, Ruskin attempted to catalogue his minerals many, many times, but with that many minerals, it was clearly going to be quite a challenge. Also the case that Ruskin was picking up an enormous amount of knowledge about minerals. I mean, the number of different types of minerals is huge. And he produced these beautiful bound volumes, Mineral Catalogue. Here's Mineral Catalogue Volume 3. We have 3 of them here. They're not the only catalogues that he produced, but they're the ones that were going on at the end of his life. And rather movingly, this third one doesn't go too far. In beautiful copperplate writing, it sort of starts out with one numbering system, but then there's a bit of a sort of change, and Ruskin's more familiar writing comes in. This is Ruskin's ordinary hand, and he's starting to catalogue them, apparently all over again. And then we move on a little bit further. We come to this entry, Brantwood, 18th of March, 1884. Now, this is late in Ruskin's life. And he says, I begin today on my return from London a revised catalogue of the minerals, which I hope may remain mine as long as I can enjoy them. So this is his personal collection, the ones he wanted to keep. And afterwards, somewhere and in some sort, several serve as my monument, having in their time given me much pleasure and been the sources of helpful knowledge. There's a rather beautiful and concise sort of statement of how he wanted to view the minerals that were left here at Brantwood, that he hadn't given away to others. And so it starts here with number 1. And there's like a numbering system that Ruskin's developed for it. Some little cut-out pieces of paper that he sticks to some of the minerals. And here you can tell he was in the middle of doing that when he ran out of steam. So here he's got as far as number 51. Not very far along his 2,000 or so that were still remaining here at Brantwood. But there in his writing are some of the labels that he prepared. So let's have a look at the minerals. Well, they're housed in these spectacular, beautiful wooden cabinets, which were made specially for Ruskin by the family furniture makers Snell & Co. in London. And they are the classic sort of collection cabinets, are made to store safely, but readily to hand all the specimens. So they're all numbered, and this numbering system is our numbering system. They've all been catalogued and identified. And they range from quite humble sort of types of specimens. For instance, here, we've got the flints. Now, flint's a pretty common sort of stone and not one that you would think was particularly interesting. But Ruskin recognises some of the sort of hidden features in flints, like, for instance, this banding that occurs. The sort of thing that's present in a flint but not obvious to most people when they see just this fractured sort of element of the flint itself. So you've got them here in these little pebbles as well. There are some beautiful minerals that are crystalline. Here are some of the crystals that he had. There are some much bigger specimens than these, but these have, one of the beauties of these small things is that you can sort of envisage Ruskin sitting in the study here with these in his hand. And when you hold these up to the light, you'll see that this is a quartz crystal, but which has got inside it what they call intrusions. And this particularly fascinated Ruskin, this idea that you could have, in a sense, two types of crystal or many more different types of crystal penetrating each other, forming these different sort of and amazing optical things. And here you see Ruskin's got one of those numbers that I showed you actually on the crystal. So there you know that he's had this one in his hand and has been sticking the little label on. So it's very, very direct. You can really understand the way that he was working here in the study. So there's a little stone up here, which looks like one of the less interesting types of rocks. It's not a lovely crystalline mineral. It's just a sort of banded grey sort of schist, or gneiss actually. And when we looked at that, it just somehow seemed familiar. The shape, the form, the size, there was something about it that we'd seen before but couldn't quite place it. And then one day we were looking through one of Ruskin's books, and that pull this out, was a book called Modern Painters. Ruskin wrote a 5-volume work on modern art. So you saw it in the 19th century. And since most of that art was careful of the bells there, that's our burglar alarm system. The book was about landscape painters primarily. So for Ruskin, that meant also talking about landscape and the nature of landscape, and in particular mountain scenery. And Ruskin had been exploring in the Alps. So here was a rock that Ruskin had picked up in the Alps, which he actually talks about in the example of figure 4, which is this one, a piece of rock from the top of Mont Brevin. There are very few of them, and the material in which they're surrounded is so hard and compact the whole mass breaks irregularly. So here's his drawing of that rock, and we have a very specific sort of time and place where it was found, and there we actually have the rock. Now, at first, we couldn't be absolutely certain it was the same rock because now rather it looked different. And then we realised that if we hold this up to a mirror, it's a perfect replica. It's just that when you make one of these plates, unless you turn it, it prints in reverse, and it wasn't turned. So there you go. And there's one more rather beautiful crystal, which I'll just bring over, which is a nice example of Ruskin's later writings about the minerals. And that's this one. And if you look at that, one of the books that he wrote here at Brantwood about minerals was called, or about all his love of geology, was called Deucalion. Ruskin loved these obscure titles. And in Deucalion, we will find a chapter which actually is about crystallization. And it starts by talking about a frost at Brantwood, in fact, and how the crystals came up out of the ground as it froze. And that is a clue to what Ruskin was looking at in some of these minerals, because a couple of pages further on, we come across this plate, which it says in minute writing at the bottom, drawn by J. Ruskin. And here is the very mineral that he has been drawing. So those 2,000 odd specimens, they're not all in the study, but there are an awful lot of them. If you would open any of these drawers, you would find that they have minerals in them. Here we have minerals. There we have minerals. There by Ruskin's seat we have minerals. Here by Ruskin's piano we have minerals. We can have a look at some the things that we've got in here. I've got beautiful and complex crystals. We've got beautiful minerals that have come out of, in effect, fossils. So here we've got coral, and it's been coated with chalcedony on the interior, and many of them still bear the labels of the agents that supplied them. In particular here, a man called F.H. Butler, who took over the business of a man called Talling, mineralogist. And he paid 1 shilling and 3 pence for this specimen. So there we go.